Hey there, Sandals Church family. My name is ATCHISON. I'm the regional pastor here at Sandals Church, and this is campus pastor of Moreno Valley Campus, Jeff White. We want to welcome you to this week's episode of We Are Sandals Church. And so if you're just catching us for the first time, I just want to take a couple steps back and speak a little bit to what We Are Sandals Church means, the big idea behind what we're doing with the We Are Sandals Church efforts, and then talk a little bit about something we've done really special just recently, and Pastor Jeff is going to share a little bit about what that was like at his campus. But when the COVID thing first began, and as I was tasked with sort of trying to figure out what our response is going to look like, how are we able to serve our community in an unprecedented time? We'd never been in a situation like this before, and so we began to say, like, well, there's all these restrictions on what we're able to do. We're not meeting on the weekends. We're not as in touch with our people in the normal ways that we would be conversationally during a weekend service or something like that. And so what I began to think through is just this idea that I developed with one of our other staff members, Mike Terrell. And it was just this idea of we need to let the church loose. We need to remind them in this time of something that is essential for the church. And that's this, that Jesus has called us to be the salt and light of the earth. And COVID or no COVID, that call on our lives as Christians remains. And so the idea was just this, be the church. Be the Christian that you are right where you are. So one of the ways I like to put this is that we are commissioned, the Great Commission to make disciples is still on the table for us, even in this season. And to fulfill the Great Commandment, the Great Commission by means of the Great Commandment. Mm-hmm. The Great Commandment is simply this: love God with all that you are and love your neighbor as yourself. And so what we wanted to do is instead of saying, hey, what is Sandals Church doing? When someone approaches me with that question, so one of the things I like to do, and maybe sometimes put them on the spot and watch them dance a little bit, is just to say, Sandals, who is Sandals Church? You know, who are you referring to? What are you referring to when you say Sandals Church should do this? And then they suggest a really good idea for a way to serve a community. And sometimes what I like to say is, you are Sandals Church. We are Sandals Church. And so we began to think about a few different levels or spheres that we could be the church in this time. And so one of those is just the one that I mentioned, just on an individual basis, sort of grassroots. You don't need a green light from us organizationally to do good in your neighborhood. I didn't mean for that to rhyme like it did. That was a little bit cheesy. I'm a poet and don't know it, but forgive me. There's dad jokes and then there's pastor jokes. Yeah. So we just wanted to say, hey, look, knock on your neighbor's door, and we actually did that. We put that out. We sent out an all church email and just said, hey, look, I want to challenge you this week. Knock on your neighbor's door. Be safe. Be wise. Social distancing. All the normal things, and just check on them. Just say, hey, how are you doing? What do you need? How can we pray for you? And so we did that. And then the second level, which I'd like for Pastor Jeff to talk about in just a moment, was just that each of our campuses, and if you don't know, we're what's called a multi-site model. And so we have several sites, 11 locations right now to be exact, and each of those has a campus pastor. They have a campus staff team. And we said, hey, look, we want to give the campuses the ability to come up with ways that they're going to serve their campus, that while they're not meeting physically, they can still stay connected. And so, Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about that second level of how we've responded at the campus level? Yeah, what are some of the things that you've done at the Moreno Valley campus, and maybe a couple stories that you want to throw in there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I thought of was it actually started even in our neighborhood with my wife. So her first idea was like, how do we bless our neighbors a little bit? And so that was one idea she came up with. So we bought those little pinwheel things at Dollar Tree store, and we put them in everybody's front yard. And it was so fun because last night we went on a walk with our family, and they're still there. Like most houses still have them, and they're just something good to look at. You drive up the street, you see them all. She put a little invite to watch Sandals Church online with it, and so, and we got to meet a bunch of our neighbors as we went out and did that. The other idea that came up is like, we can't give you hugs, so we bought a bunch of hugs and put them in bags, and we put a little note in there. Hey, we can't give you a hug right now, but here's this, for social distancing.
Sending a virtual hug.
A virtual hug, but it was actually the candy hugs. There's kisses, but there's also hugs. Yeah.
Okay.
Most people don't know, but there's kisses and hugs. And so we didn't want to do kisses, we just did hugs. But we delivered those to a bunch of people from our campus, like to their homes, and just put them on their porch, rang their doorbell, and ditched. And so we kind of started there. And then these ideas started to come out from people at our campus. People at our campus are like, what if we do this? What if we do this? And so two things that I want to highlight that is just part of like who we are and what we ended up doing was just, we did a car parade. And the car parade was bags of chalk. So we bought all the chalk at Dollar Tree at 2 locations. And we put them in small bags. And again, there's an invite to online to watch service together and a card for Moreno Valley, like when we meet again. And we just got together. We drove together and stayed in our own car. We drove together in neighborhoods, honking the horn, passing out chalk. And, we wore masks and we just set it on their driveway and we said hi to them, and then they came and picked it up, and it was great. It was really encouraging. It was great to just see our people, get out of the house and just to serve the community. And so the car parade with the chalk was super fun. It was great. And then last week, because it was National Nurses Day, we had somebody on our campus who said, hey, I really want to serve nurses. Pastor Tim Walker's wife works at Kaiser Moreno Valley. Her boss calls me, we get in touch the same day, and it just turns into something and it was like, okay, what do you guys need? And they're like, we want to be loved on, we want snacks, we want, we just need to be cared for. And so we said, okay, we're going to do it. So we rallied people, we invited people to give donations towards that as well at the same time as the tablet drive. And people stepped up, and we went to the store, we bought snacks. And then Alicia said this, she said, hey, can you donate some Bibles? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can find some Bibles, right?
We're a church. We ought to have some Bibles around.
So they've created like a serenity room because there's so much stress in the hospital right now that they can go to this room and just meditate, pray, whatever they want to do. So we bought some journals and we gave them Bibles, and the 60 days to read through the Bible, we gave them some of those to put in there. And so, man, she texts with me. Oh, here it comes. Dang.
Jeff's a crier. I said, hey, it's okay if he cries. Yeah. Here it comes.
It was so good, like just serving them. And then she texts me this really long text, and she's like, thank you for caring for us. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for leaving snacks. Thank you for caring for me. And she is a Sandalite, so she attends Sandals, but she's like, I'm going to come check out Moreno Valley because she's been coming to Hunter Park. And I'm like, okay, you can. And other people are asking her, what's this Sandals Church and why are they doing this? And so the impact continues because we left snacks and Bibles and things there as well. And so those are a couple of the projects locally, and I love it because I feel like the people at our campus have said, we want to serve, how can we? And sometimes people can't figure it out on their own. And so we said, well, let's do this together, and people showed up. They showed up and gave, they showed up and served, and I don't know, man, it's just been great. So, yeah.
I think one thing that Jeff mentions, just to speak to the We Are Sandals Church idea, I want it to be clear, the idea behind this, especially as we try and bring some visibility to We Are Sandals Church on social media and in various aspects, it's not to point to Sandals Church and say, hey, look at us, we're awesome. It's really a couple of things. It's that people need to see that there are good things happening. In this time where anxiety and depression and worry and fear are at maybe an all-time high, we wanted to be able to bring some light to the kinds of things that our church is doing, and ultimately so that we can point people to the good God that we serve, to say, hey, look, God calls his people to do good in their communities, to bless those who are in need, to help with these kinds of efforts. And so, yeah, I just appreciate you sharing that. Can you talk a little bit about, just as a little foreshadowing, one of the ways that you found out about a need for tablets, even in the hospital, as you did this effort to care for them on Nurses Day? There's a really interesting story about the need for tablets that we stumbled on, even outside of the senior living facilities that we started to focus on with the tablet drive. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so at Kaiser, again, Moreno Valley, as I'm connecting with them, two things came up, and one was a facility in Riverside was shut down with elder patients, home health of sorts, and they had to distribute the patients to different places. And so Kaiser Riverside, who doesn't normally do this, they now have several patients from that facility in Riverside and they're not ready for this. They're not really, I mean, they're equipped as a hospital, but they're not used to this. And so I asked her, I said, hey, if you had a few tablets, could that help interact with these people, with their families? And she goes, absolutely. So then I'm there, and Alicia brings me over, and she introduces me to all the people, and she introduces me to the manager who's over home health and hospice for Kaiser. So that's a whole nother place where we're going to connect and talk about, like, is there a need for tablets? Or if not a need for tablets, is there a need for conversations? And what could that look like? You think about home health and hospice, you think about how they're isolated right now, their family members can't come visit them. And so I see more opportunities kind of opening up as we have these tablets and as we connect with them. So they're one of the facilities on our list for the tablet drive for sure.
Yeah. Well, the part that I was actually thinking of was the idea early on. I don't know if this is still the case at hospitals, but where one of your staff members had went into labor, and
right.
So can you tell that story?
Yeah. So one of our staff, he and his wife had twins, and he has to be in the hospital, first of all, and can't leave for 48 to more hours. And so one of the things we did at Kaiser, first of all, is we did a dad's box for the dad's room. Because dads are there and they can't leave for like 2 or 3 days until they leave with their babies. And so we had dad's root beer and some other cool things, which was fun. But what he did is, she had C-section, and he's not able to be in the room because of COVID. He's in the other room on a tablet watching it happen. And so they were making that happen, and he happened to be the second person ever in that hospital. It was actually Kaiser Riverside that day to watch on tablet, to watch his twins being born.
Wow, that's
and
cool.
So amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. Another thing at that campus level of this sort of We Are Sandals Church response is something that some of you may have heard from Pastor Matt. He shared this during his sermons. But very early on at the campus level, we had this sort of audacious goal to make a phone call to every single person in our database. And I think our database has around 51,000 people in it. Not all of those folks attend regularly, but people who have at some point or another given us their information. And we just, again, much like we released our people individually to just go check on their neighbors, this was our way of doing that for our church. And so, Pastor Jeff, would you talk a little bit about these phone calls? And ultimately, our goal is to finish that database by the end of this month. I think we'll be on track to get there. If you haven't gotten your phone call yet, be patient with us. We're getting there. We're well over halfway done at this point. But I just wanted to hear from you how some of those calls have been. If you can think off the top of a cool story or two, whether it's from you or your campus staff teams, because Jeff's staff team and all of our campus staff teams have been charged with this, and so they're all doing that together. Why don't you share a little bit?
Well, first of all, if you haven't gotten a phone call, Adam's phone number is 555-121. No, I'm just kidding.
867-5309. No.
You can call him anytime. No. It felt really big at first. So for Moreno Valley, we average about 500 a weekend between kids and adults. And so our database, and it's not every person, because sometimes there's a family, it counts as one unit.
Sure.
But we had 1,188 people. So almost 1,200 people for Moreno Valley, and we're like, wow, that's a lot. And so we just started. And this week we finished connecting with every single person. And so, we just finished this week.
That's awesome.
And it was a big goal, and we just kept going through them. A couple things happened. First of all, there were multiple conversations with people whose parents are in a facility, and they're now unable to visit with them. So this tablet thing is really interesting how that collides with a few conversations we've had. And so this one family is like, yeah, my dad's here. There's no tablet. There's no way I can't go in. They won't let me in at all. But I can't see my dad anymore. And I used to visit him regularly. And so we had a couple of those conversations, which ties into the tablet thing for sure. Multiple good conversations. And so we are now doing online community groups. It's called Try a Group. And last Thursday night, Amber jumped on from our campus. Single mom with a disabled daughter who's 8 years old. So it's hard for her to go to a regular community group. She's been at our campus about a year. And we're on for the first time. She jumps on. And she jumped on because I had made a connection with her on a phone call. I knew her from Sunday mornings, but not more than that. So I specifically invited her to come to Try a Group. So she jumps on. We get done praying at the end, and she is overwhelmed. Like, she is in tears that her church cared enough to call her, right? out of all that we do and all the things that are going on, like in the middle of this quarantine, in the middle of this virus thing, that we cared enough to call her. And she said, I've told all my friends this, and they were blown away. Because a couple of them go to other churches, and they didn't get a call from their pastor or whatever, you know. And so, and again, not that everybody has to do that, but we chose to do that. And the results have been amazing. And I believe we've connected deeper with our people than we ever did just in showing up on Sundays. Like Sundays are great, and we're there physically. We get to worship together. There's some amazing things happening. But early on, the conversations were really long because people had a lot of time. And there were times like, yeah, I got to go. I really don't have to, like, I don't have to go anywhere, but it's been 40 minutes. I got to go, you know, or whatever. So there's a couple of times where the phone calls were definitely longer, and people have opened up, and it's just been amazing to be the church. Somebody said, we don't need a building to be the church. This is what we're supposed to be doing anyway. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, one of my own experiences of these phone calls was my boys. I have 4 boys, and my 3 youngest serve. We just launched an evening service at our Woodcrest campus at 4:30 p.m. and they serve. It's an important value for us as a family, even though they're pastors' kids and they're at church a lot, that they're not excused from what we're asking everybody else to do. And so they serve in our kids' ministry at the Sunday 4:30 service at Woodcrest. And I got a call from a volunteer, the lead of those kids' teams, to my 3 sons. And I didn't catch the email. I didn't answer it because I didn't know the number. But man, that and Crystal, I ended up texting her later just to say how much that meant to us. And so it's just been neat to even see some of our volunteers activating around some of these phone calls. Some of the call lists are long, and so we have had to invite volunteers to do that. But those calls have been pretty phenomenal. And so, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the tablet drive. And so the tablet drive was something that really formed kind of early on as I began to think about the most vulnerable population. When the COVID stuff started coming out, it was senior citizens as the early numbers of infection rates and death rates and things came out. It was clearly that category that was the most vulnerable, and because of that, the most isolated. And it's it's isolation on top of isolation. There are so many senior citizens who are already isolated pre-COVID, and so I remember getting a call from our executive pastor, and one of the things that one of our approaches philosophically at Sandals is there are lots of good ideas. There are lots of different things that we can do to serve our community. And instead of saying yes to all of those things and spreading ourselves thin and maybe not doing them as well as we could, our philosophy typically is let's find a short list, 2 or 3 things that we could do and do them well. And so our executive pastor, Pastor Dan Zimbardi, called me and he just said, hey, if there was just one thing that we could do organizationally that we could get behind, not just the individual level, not just the campuses. And it was, I just paused for a while. I don't know if the idea even originated with me, but that's what came to me in that moment, and that's what I shared with him. And so what was interesting though is what began as an idea in a perceived need. As we begin to vet this idea of doing a tablet drive and donating them to different senior facilities surrounding the 11 campuses that we have, what we realized along the way as we vetted this with various staff members at these places was that we'd stumbled onto a much greater need than we had even realized. And so it began to just crystallize the idea and say, yes, this is something that we can do, and this is something that we can do well. And so one of the reasons I asked Pastor Jeff to join me is he's helped me out quite a bit with this project. And so why don't you just talk a little bit about what happened last Saturday and or 2 Saturdays ago. Time is sort of all fuzzy to me at this moment. A couple Saturdays ago, I think. And how that experience was for you at the Moreno Valley campus.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you. The tablet drive was, again, all the campuses doing this, right? And so we, between 10 and 4 on that day, come by, bring a tablet that we can use, or bring a donation. And people showed up. People showed up. They drove up. They stayed in their cars. We social distanced the best we could. We had all the protection on, and they showed up. And what I love about this is when you invite people to give, a lot of times people love to give to something specific. They really do. Like, tell me the vision, and then they love to give specific. And one of the things that I've talked to Dan about in the past is one of the reasons people give to Sandals for these things is because they know we're going to fulfill what we say we're going to do. So when we say we're going to use it for this thing and we do it, it builds trust. And so I feel like people trust us, and they're like, yep, I'm going to give my money towards this. I'm going to give my tablet to this. And so, yeah, it was amazing to just be there and receive these things. And then since then, we pulled it all together, and we have 165 tablets ready to go by the end of this week, or if not early next week, depending on the mail. And we're ready to go, man.
Yeah.
And then we're going to launch those and figure out how to get them out to the community. So
That's awesome. You got a speedy delivery today?
Oh, yeah, delivery today was interesting. So through all the purchases, I bought 21 of them at Walmart.com, and I was leaving my house today, and the box truck shows up, and he's like, hey, I got a delivery. I'm like, okay, well, probably going to be a box or two. So he keeps piling them up and piling up and piling up. So 21 iPads, or 21 tablets, not iPads, 21 tablets in 21 boxes. So I don't know what Walmart's system is. It must work for them, but we got 21 boxes.
There you go.
Anyway.
Well, we want to thank you guys, Sandals Church, for showing up to the tablet drive. We're actually still in the middle of this project, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that in just a moment. But I just want to I want to thank you, Pastor Jeff, for joining us on this segment of We Are Sandals Church, and just for all the work that you've done, for the way that you've rallied your campus to show up. And I'm excited about what's ahead as we fulfill the rest of this tablet drive. And so right now we're going to check out a video, and we'll be right back after that video. See you in a minute. Welcome back. I want to introduce two new guests, colleagues of mine, Bryan Wade, who works with our digital media team, and HILARY, who works with our finance team. And they also each of their teams play a special role in these efforts as well. And a lot of their work is behind the scenes, but it's important in doing something well. And so I wanted to just start with you, Bryan. Can you speak a little bit to the results, like what came out of this? We heard that we have 165 by the end of this week from Pastor Jeff, but can you break down how that came about for us and just the results of the tablet drive itself?
Yeah, sure. So initially we got 44 tablets and just over $8,000, and that basically we were able to buy the extra 121, and that affords us to actually give around 5 tablets to each facility that we're partnering with.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so as Brian said, we have a number of facilities. So we have 11 campuses, and we charge each of the campuses to establish a relationship with at least 3 facilities in their community. And so if you've got your math right, that was about 33 facilities that we were looking to, and the total amount adds up to being about 5 tablets per facility that each of them can use. One of the things we've talked about at the beginning of this process was making sure that it was super easy and simple on the user end, since this population might struggle a little bit more with technology. And so can you speak a little bit to how we prepared for that, and even what we're going to be doing on Thursday to get these ready for ease of use?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had quite a few apps that we tested out just for ease of use purposes. And a lot of that came from me and actually a volunteer of mine, just testing out like different things like Google Apps and such, Zoom. And we just really want to find something that literally you could just tap a few things and start it. That simple. And so yeah, through that we found our solution, and I think it's going to be fairly easy to use. So.
Can you talk about what we're doing as we gather together with safety measures in place, social distancing on Thursday, once we have all the remaining tablets in, kind of what we'll be doing on Thursday to get things ready?
Yeah, so on Thursday we're going to go ahead and sanitize all the iPads, tablets, and go ahead and start resetting them in order to get them as simple as possible. We're only going to put maybe 4 or 5 apps total on the home screen, so that way it's easy to navigate, easy for them to find exactly what they need. There will be an app to schedule their phone call, and then also the app to facilitate that. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found out is, as we stumbled upon this really great need, was we heard stories about how some staff members were lending their personal iPhones to seniors and making the calls themselves, and then handing the phone over so that some of these senior citizens could see and hear their loved ones for the first time in weeks. And so I'm excited about how easy this is going to be for them. Some of these facilities we're simply going to be donating the tablets, but what Brian also mentioned is sort of the second phase of the tablet drive, which is if the facilities are open to this and comfortable with this, that we would be able to schedule digital visits with some of these senior citizens. So they're very, again, lonely. They're already a fairly isolated population, and being on lockdown in a really strict way. We wanted to be able to say, hey, even if they have family and friends that they've been able to connect with, but especially if they don't, that, man, there's some people at our church that would just love to have a conversation with you. Talk about the weather. Talk about, those grandkids that you haven't been able to connect with for so many weeks. And so our hope is that we'll be able to mobilize some of our people as part of this We Are Sandals Church effort to visit with some of these senior citizens digitally after we deliver these tablets. So I'm excited about that. I also want to speak a little bit to Hillary and her expertise on the finance team. One of the things that people don't realize is that as we continue doing these good things in our community, that there are a number of different ways that you can give. And I just want to start by saying, as Pastor Matt has done as recently as this past weekend, that we are blown away by how faithful our people have been, especially in the midst of a crisis like this. And it really does allow us to continue not just operating as a church and not having to lay off staff members, but to go above and beyond to continue ministries, even some of these new efforts that we are doing. And so I wanted to ask Hillary just even briefly, is the normal giving of cash and checks, is that the only kind of thing that can be donated to the church?
Oh no, we take in what we call non-cash donations. So that would be anything from cars, tablets. We've even had grave sites donated.
Grave sites.
Yeah, so it's all a matter of we take in what we can give back. Like if somebody donates a car, if somebody's in need of a car, we have that car on hand to then donate to a family and that sort of thing. And like with these tablets, people came in, and if they gave us information like a make and model of that tablet. We could even then write a donation, non-cash donation letter to give to them, which would in a way be like what they're giving on the weekend in cash or check.
Gotcha. Yeah, we actually even offered that. We worked with our finance team to say, hey, as people come through to drop off these tablets at the campuses, are we able to give them a tax deductible receipt for their donation? They were like, absolutely. And so some folks just dropped it off, and some folks were just like, yeah, I'd love that. And we took down their address, and they'll be getting a receipt in the mail. But I think the message that I'm hearing is don't be limited in what you think you can give to Sandals Church.
Yes.
And so some of us have things of value in various forms, whether it's a
Yes.
grave site or something else. And so you were telling me a story earlier about some gold that was donated. That was an interesting process for you. You want to share a little bit?
Yeah, so that was when we kicked off Momentum, and we didn't really know what to do with it at first because it's not something that comes by very often.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to find someone to get a appraisal from. And so calling around, you can't get much information on that sort of thing. So I ended up packing up my backpack and trying to take it to a couple of jewelers. And it was a little nerve-wracking carrying that kind of thing around in my backpack.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we ended up just having somebody come down to Sandals and do an appraisal, and was able to turn that cash or that gold into cash to then donate towards the Momentum Project.
That's cool. So for those of you who don't know, we had a capital campaign a couple years ago called the Momentum Project, and there are times where we get these interesting gifts, and somebody's got to do something with those interesting gifts to find out their value and to turn them into a donation that's of use here at Sandals Church. And so, Hillary, if somebody had a question about a property or something that they had that they wanted to donate that is non-cash, what's the best way for them to communicate that to us and maybe turn that into a donation?
Yeah, so I would say the best way is going to be emailing us at giving@sandalschurch.com. But if you have any issues with email, you can always go to your campus pastor or just reach out to Sandals, and they'll get you directed to us.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks for all the work that both of you do. A lot of it's behind the scenes, and so, we've heard from Pastor Jeff earlier, and he's sort of out there on the front lines and dealing with the people. But I think a big part of why I love having both of you on is just to see the breadth of skills that are required to pull off a big We Are Sandals Church project like the tablet drive. And it also speaks as a good reminder of the various ways that as a church we have different gifts and different skill sets. I'm not the person to turn non-cash donations into cash donations or finding appraisals. Like that's not my jam. And but yet that doesn't mean that that's not a valuable part of what we're doing. And that's not just true for us as staff. That's true for you.
Yeah.
And so what we want to end this segment with is just to say, to invite you in to this idea of We Are Sandals Church. And man, if you haven't been able to really identify the way that you're gifted, whether it's your personality, your story, your skills, your experiences, what you can bring to the table and say, here, God, this is what I have to offer. Would you do something with it? I will guarantee you that if you do that, and if you do that, especially in community, if you don't know what those things are, some of the best way to figure those things out is to ask somebody that follows and loves Jesus and say, hey, what do you see in me? What, and then different ways of using that and turning that into good and ultimately to serve the church and to serve this message that we've been charged with, this good news of Jesus Christ. Because so many times people might not be ready for the gospel of Jesus Christ, but when they're genuinely cared for without any strings attached, we're not expecting anything back from the senior citizens that are going to be blessed by this. then I think a lot of times it begins to soften a hard heart and open people up to God in a way that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. And so I want to invite you into discovering what that is and to become part of the conversation about how you can activate your own skill set and giftedness and bring that to the table and watch God bless it and multiply it, and then in the process also to bless you. One of the things I say is we know we're in the sweet spot when we're giving of ourselves, but we walk away feeling more full than when we came. When it's this sort of beautiful, mutually beneficial exchange between God and us, when there's multiple different things that come to the table to make something like this tablet drive possible. And so if you're not already engaged with some of the things that we're doing, we'd love for you to do that, whether that's by giving, whether that's by bringing some technical skill to things, or donating a tablet or whatever it is down the road. So thank you so much for being Sandals Church and for this idea of We Are Sandals Church and considering the invitation to become part of it. And for those of you who have been part of it, thank you so much. We're so blessed by you, and we know that so many in our communities have been blessed by you as well. God bless you guys.